I just remember being okay, and then the next moment I was not okay. I was literally sitting there in a panic, and it just hit me all of a sudden, like, didn't know where I was, who I was. Like, I'd look down at my hands or I'd look in the mirror and just it felt weird. Like, I didn't realize who I was or what was going on. It was like I was looking through a screen at myself. Not it it just didn't look right like it had before.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean O'Connor, author of The Depersonalization Manual, and today I'm speaking with Taylor Abney from Tennessee in the United States. Taylor had quite an intense experience with depersonalization disorder, but she has since fully recovered. And Taylor is with us today to tell us about her experience and her recovery. Thanks for being with us today, Taylor. How are you doing?
A lot better. A lot better since the last time that I spoke with you. A whole different person, if I'm being honest.
Good, good. That's
Um,
so great to hear.
it's unreal. Like, I remember speaking to you last time and being terrified to talk to you, and like waking up this morning and was just super excited, just like so ready to do this call. It's, I don't know, crazy the difference. Because last night I went through and watched my videos from before. And so I'm excited to see this one, just to see the difference in like how I react, how I talk to you, the way I talk to you, because I looked like a scared puppy when I talked to you before.
Well, listen, it's so great to have you on the channel, Taylor. You're very welcome. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do?
So I am from Nashville, Tennessee. Right now I am currently in school full time. I
Mhm.
didn't quit school, going through the depersonalization. I did change my major though from criminal justice to business management. I also work full time from home. I am a supervisor for a prescription drug plan company through CVS Pharmacy.
Mhm.
And then I also got back into coaching ball. So I'm coaching basketball as well. So I've
Great.
got a pretty full-time schedule right now. Got back in the gym. I'm there all the time. So my life turned around 4 or 5 months ago, it seemed like. I was able to get back out, do everything I wanted to do, and I loaded my schedule up back to how it was before. And now I just stay busy all the time.
That's great to hear. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience with depersonalization, Taylor, and how did it start for you?
It was life changing. I mean, life changing. Like we had discussed before, mine was random. It was happened one night after a bad drug experience. Um I, I just remember being okay, and then the next moment I was not okay. I was literally sitting there in a panic, and it just hit me all of a sudden, like didn't know where I was, who I was. And of course, me, I thought it was literally a bad drug experience. Like I thought maybe I had something that was laced. Um, I had a panic attack, which I had never had before. So of course it made it 10 times worse. So I wound up going to the emergency room thinking that something was wrong. And then the next day I was fine. I didn't have any depersonalization symptoms. I was fine. I was driving, had just, forgot about the previous night, put it behind me. And then a week later, I started feeling those symptoms again, just like I'd look down at my hands or I'd look in the mirror and just it felt weird. Like I didn't realize who I was or what was going on. It was like I was looking through screen at myself. Not it. It just didn't look right like it had before. And the first couple of months going through that was crazy. I didn't want to leave my bed. I mean, it took everything to get me to get up and go to the bathroom. I didn't talk to nobody. I pretty much stayed off my phone. It was literally me in bed. I watched movies. I tried to sleep as much as I could so that way I didn't have to experience what I was experiencing. Um, and when I did talk to people, I thought they were going to think I was crazy. So I just tried not to talk to people. Um, and then it also didn't help that during this experience, I was going through the experience of my mom being sick because she had just been put on hospice care. So it was like this on top of that. And so it was just a lot going on at once. So it was, instead of me really being able to focus on my recovery, I was having to focus on her as well. So it was super stressful having to deal with all these thoughts and feelings, and then having to deal with all the thoughts and feelings of everything going on with her. Um, but it seems like going through what I did with her, seeing her, be sick, and then having to deal with after she had passed, having to go, to the funeral home, um, just dealing with everything of that sort. It made me get out of the house. It made me focus on something other than the depersonalization, and it helped change my thought patterns because instead of me constantly checking to see if those feelings or thoughts were there, I was thinking, okay, well, I've got to get this done, or she needs this done, or this and that. And it kind of actually really helped me. And so I tried to look at it that way instead of taking two bad experiences together and try to outweigh one with the other, because it definitely helped going through what I did with her for me to be able to recover, if that makes sense.
We often think um, that the day-to-day anxieties that we experience, are just going to make the DPDR worse or the undue anxiety worse. And surprisingly, we often find that it actually helps, because when we do that, we take our attention away from the undue anxiety or the things in DP and DR, which are only supposed to be temporary, and they allow them to fade away, even if what we're focusing on feels like quite high stress, or a separate kind of anxious situation. Once it takes our attention away from the DPDR, it allows it to fade away into the background. Um, and would I be correct in saying, Taylor, that it was weed that triggered it in the first place?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it was. And I used to smoke all the time, and that's what's bad because I knew the feeling, I guess, of being high back when I was in school because it helped with studying and stuff like that. And then when mama had gotten really sick, I was like, I just need something to help me calm down. And I tried it and it just threw me through a loop. It was over, I want to say over exaggerated because that's what it feels like now. Because I feel like I just over exaggerated that situation, but it was insane. That's the word I will use. That night was insane.
yeah.
I remember that night to a T. But everything from that night, really, until a few months ago, is just kind of like blurred. Like I remember the feelings and the thoughts, but I don't remember every little detail like I thought I would because it was such a traumatic experience.
It's such a common thing to have that feeling of panic while on a drug, especially like weed in particular, because weed can be so introspective, and especially when you're having a more intense experience than you anticipated, it could be very, very frightening. And even if it's happened to you before, like when it happens again, you always think, oh, this is the one that like that has broken my brain or damaged me somehow, you know. So it's always particularly frightening.
Yes.
It's interesting as well, Taylor, what you mentioned about, you know, the like feeling okay the next day, but there being kind of a delayed reaction. So this is like extremely common as well. So that's what happened to me as well, was that I had a very, very bad weed experience, very intense weed experience. And then it was a couple of weeks later that I had the what I thought was my first panic attack that actually set it off. But what I realized afterwards was that like I had had the panic attack, the first panic attack on the weed. And when I had the second panic attack weeks later, the scariest thing about it was that I felt like I was high again. I was kind of back in that weed headspace, you know, even though I
Hmm.
hadn't taken anything. And of course, that panic attack spirals and spirals and spirals. Um, can you tell us a bit more about specifically some of the symptoms you were experiencing, Taylor? Which symptoms in particular were the most troublesome for you?
So the top one was the fact that I didn't recognize who I was. Like, I feel like when I was not looking at myself in the mirror, I knew who I was. But as soon as like I would walk by one, I would literally just look and not know who I was. Like deep down, it was like, okay, I know who I am. But the fact that I'm looking at myself and I'm having to think, is this really me?
Right.
Terrified me. Um, and then looking, not just myself, like looking at my sister or my fiance or just anybody that I was around, it's like I just didn't recognize who they were or was trying to make me not recognize who they were, even though I was focusing on trying to recognize who they were. Um, and then just that intense feeling of everything feeling like it was an animation, like that it was not real, that I had lived a lie my whole life. Like, is have I died and woke up in some video game? Like somebody else was controlling my life instead of me being able to control it, because that's what it felt like. I did not feel like I had control over my life when I was going through that. It's like I couldn't control the way that I thought, the way that I felt, what I thought about myself. Um, and then the not being able to get out of my bed. And I know that's part of the depersonalization. You're terrified. I didn't want to look in mirrors. I didn't want to talk to nobody because I didn't feel like myself. And then the intrusive thoughts terrified me. So when I had finally reached out to a therapist, because I should have been seeing one before then, just dealing with all the anxiety that I've dealt with, just to talk to somebody, get stuff off my chest, someone who understands anxiety more than my best friend. Because my best friend's going to tell me what I want to hear, whereas a therapist is going to tell me what I need to hear.
Right.
And so when I had finally reached out to a therapist, I was able to unload everything. And the intrusive thought terrified me because not once anything that I've been through in my life has ever made me think I want to hurt myself, ever. And the fact that they were there not only terrified me, but made me so mad because I had such a good life that why would me as a person be thinking like that? So I would get so upset with myself because I didn't understand why I was thinking like that. and I would compare myself to my mom's situation. Like, here I am dealing with something that's mind playing me, whereas she's dealing something that's life threatening, but yet I'm the one sitting here having these thoughts. So it definitely helped that I reached out to a therapist because I didn't understand why they were there. And it had gotten to the point where that I did really didn't want to leave my bed or be alone because I was so afraid of the thoughts. Because I knew deep down I would never ever do anything of that sort ever. I'm the one of the happiest, freaking funniest go lucky people you would ever meet. Like, no, I never would have ever thought of anything like that. And so when it hit me one night, I was like, what in the heck is going on with me? And I really think that's one of the most terrifying experiences that I had was just those thoughts in general, because the whole experience was terrifying, but the thought of wanting to hurt yourself, I it's it's so scary.
I remember having like experiencing thoughts like that as well, and you know, having no kind of frame of reference for them, being absolutely terrified by them. And the scariest thing about those thoughts, I think, is that you logically know that you shouldn't be thinking that, and you logically know that you don't want to do that, and you never would do that. You'd never hurt yourself. You never hurt anybody else. Um, there's a lovely way of thinking about it that comes from, I believe, cognitive behavioral therapy, but it suggests that the when you have intrusive thoughts like that and they're really frightening you, and if they your stomach sinks and your heart races and you think that's terrifying, but it's the fact that you consider those thoughts to be frightening. That's what demonstrates the difference between having the thought and ever acting on it. The fact that you feel kind of horrified by that thought shows you like that there's a massive chasm between thinking a thought and acting on it. um that was something that I remember thinking that used to help me back in the day. Not being able to get out of bed as well, my god. Like I remember like waking up in the morning, and I'd have about 3 or 4 seconds of not thinking about DP, and then
Mm.
it's like I would remember that I was supposed to have this thing, or I'd check on it and I'd say, okay, is it there or not? And then if it was, and of course, like if you check on it, it's going to be there, like so you check on it and you go, oh, it's still there. So, oh great, now I have to go through the whole day, and then I'd lie in bed for like a half an hour and try to motivate myself and thinking, how am I going to do this? It's just and that was every morning, a couple of seconds of having forgotten about it, and then bang, there it is, and having to drag myself out of bed. Um, and the thing as well about feeling like you don't have control over your life, it's a really important part of why DP and DR is so frustrating, and often with all anxiety based conditions, is the feeling of loss of control, because it feels like this kind of cloud has kind of moved in over your head, and there's nothing you can do about it, or you feel like there's nothing you can do about it, and you just kind of cross your fingers and go, I hope this goes away sometime. And but you feel like there's nothing that you can do to get rid of it, which obviously isn't true, and of course you can 100% get rid of it.
Mhm.
But it's that especially in those first couple of months with it, where you don't, and often, and also when you don't know what it is as well, when you don't know that the words depersonalization, derealization exist to describe what you're experiencing, it feels particularly frightening. And that's will bring me to my next question, Taylor. Well, at what point did you discover the word depersonalization, derealization? Was it through the therapist, or was it online, or how did you find it?
So it was actually online, and it really happened on TikTok. So I tried to keep myself busy with funny videos or funny movies, comedies. Um, and I was scrolling, like I would look up symptoms on TikTok, excuse me, and I scrolled across a video, and this girl was describing how she was feeling and how she had gotten these feelings after a bad drug experience. And I was like, okay. So then I went to the internet browser and started looking it up more. And I came across your videos and I just kept watching and watching and then reading comments or reviews. And then I would watch more. And I finally sat down with my fiance and had him watch them to see, because he was, not only did I experience it, he did too. You know, he went through not depersonalization, but he went through the view of seeing somebody with it. So, in my opinion, he experienced it too because it was a whole different me. Like, I was not myself. So, you know, he watched it and just, he was like, this is from what you described, what you're going through. And so that's when I finally bought the manual. And then I think I reached out to you not long after I had received the manual and we had talked and I got to talk to you more about it. And it really just kind of, I guess, sunk in after I spoke with you because, like, I had that thought of, okay, this is exactly what it is. But after speaking with you and hearing your experience and getting to listen to you talk about, you know, symptoms of it or feelings from it, it really just clicked. And once I had spoke with you and knew that it's what it was, I did feel relieved that I knew I'm not crazy. Like, I didn't have a psychotic break. You know, I'm not going to be put in a nut house. Like, I'm okay. It's a situation that I'm going through. But once I did figure out what it was, I stopped looking it up because I do know that when I was searching it, you know, and it was just reading some people's experiences from it and them being like, I've had it for years. I was so discouraged, so discouraged. So, of course, it made me feel 10 times worse because I found that on days that I was thinking about it and thinking, well, I'm not going to recover. Like, I'm strong, but mentally I am weak because used to deal, or still deal with everyday anxiety. Um, I just felt like I wouldn't recover. And that was not fun, thinking that I would never get through it and get back to who I was.
The experience of, like, encountering people who have had it for years can feel, it's very, and I certainly had that too um when I went on the forums at first, because when I went on first, I was like, well, there's a name for this, that's great. And then you see that there's people who've had this for years and years, and it's seems very, very frightening. But in actuality, it makes complete sense, because all that demonstrates is that people get anxiety-based conditions, and it takes some people longer to sort it out, to recover, than others. Which is the same with claustrophobia, agoraphobia, panic disorder. It just takes people different amounts of time because there's so many different variables involved. But at no point does it become a condition from which you can't recover. And there aren't different types of the condition that last for longer than others. It's just like what I often say is that, like, when I say I had depersonalization for 2 years, what I'm actually saying is that I developed depersonalization disorder, and for about a year and 9 or 10 months, I just did a lot of the wrong things. It took me ages to figure out what was wrong with me. I did things like drink lots of coffee to try and make myself wake up, which wasn't a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of I assumed it must have been a bunch of different other things that was wrong with me. When I figured out what was wrong and what I needed to do, and I did the correct steps to recover, I did recover, just like everybody does from any anxiety-based condition. But it didn't mean that I got a version of DP that lasts for 2 years. It just means that I got an anxiety-based condition, and it took me a while to figure out what it was. Um, and the other thing you mentioned as well, Taylor, like the thing of, like, when you finding out what it is, like, or having discussion with me, and that made you feel better, was that, like, that demonstrates that the um, knowing what it is makes it reduces the levels of anxiety, because there's a phrase that says anxiety is caused by the fear of anxiety, and depersonalization by extension is caused by the fear of depersonalization. So when you figure out what depersonalization is, and you figure out and you understand why the anxiety is causing it, it just kind of takes a lot of the fear away from it, because you just say, oh, okay, this is a defensive mechanism. It was pretty scary, and there's a bunch of symptoms that are not pleasant at all. But here's why this one happens. Here's why this one happens. Here's why this one happens. And okay, I can start to let this go, or I can at least I can internalize why it happened in the first place, and take a lot of that kind of scaffolding of fear away from it, and allow it to start to fade away. If you don't mind my asking, Taylor, what was your lowest point in the whole experience? Was there any particular day or time or experience that still sticks with you, or that you remember? I mean,
So when I first had figured out what it was and wasn't sleeping, I decided to go to the doctor to try and get put on anxiety medication because I have never been the type to take medication because I'm highly sensitive to medicine. My body reacts to medicines a lot different than other people's. So I've never been a fan of taking it. And so they put me on, um, it's a medication called hydroxyzine, and it helps with being able to sleep at night because I was getting anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. Because even when trying to sleep, my mind was constantly turning. I was just sitting there thinking about it and I couldn't sleep. And when I started taking the medicine, it made me feel super out of it, and because it was just so strong. And so I couldn't take it because it would give me like that head high feeling of being out of it, kind of like how I felt the night with the weed experience. So it would like trigger that night. And of course, I would start to begin panicking like I did that night. So when I thought, well, I can't even take medication to help get through this, it made me feel, I think, more depressed than anxious because I was like, well, I can't even depend on the one thing that helps people with their anxiety every day. Um, so I guess it kind of like put me in a depressed state, and I would have never thought that I had been in a depressed state until I looked at pictures and videos that like my sister would randomly take of me just for a look back at this day when you were like this for when I recover. Like look at the difference of how you were then and you're back to yourself now. And like we'll randomly go through those videos and pictures just to see like how different of a person I was. And I looked depressed. Gosh, I looked depressed. And I think that was one of the lowest points of it was the fact that I couldn't even depend on anxiety medication to help me through it. Like it was literally well, put your big girl pants on. This is you. Can't depend on nothing else. But in the long run, I'm glad that I was able to do it without it because now I know I can do those types of things. I can handle my anxiety and deal with the troublesome of the anxiety without having to depend on medication because I'm not always going to be able to take medication for things because I'm sensitive to it. So it kind of gave me that boost of confidence knowing that I can do it without it.
um, the the feelings of depression as well. They're very, very common with. They're a common experience that happen with anxiety-based conditions, and I certainly experienced something like that myself. I mean, I remember for me in particular, it was, I guess, a couple of months into it where I kind of realized that the things that I would have done to feel better in the past, at times of, like, if I was feeling a bit sad or down, I could always just like watch watch a couple of episodes of The Simpsons and then grand, like, mood goes up immediately. It's a guarantee, like, or I'll throw on Jurassic Park, like, or I'll read Lord of the Rings or something like that, like, I'll guarantee that it'll just take my mind away from things. And then what I found was with this, or with DP and DR, was that like realizing that those things didn't help at all. And not only did they not help, but I couldn't focus on them long enough for them to even start to help. I couldn't focus
Mhm.
on 3 paragraphs of a book, not to mention reading The Lord of the Rings, Um, and it really, really hit me hard. And I felt an intense sense of depression, like, and yeah, and just heartbroken over it as well, just thinking, well, I can't enjoy the things that I used to do, and I think that as well, Taylor, goes back to what you mentioned about the feeling of loss of control, of that, like, you know, the the knowledge that in the past I could have done these things to help myself. So there's a sense
Mhm.
of control in it. But now I have this thing, and none of these things work anymore. None of these things are helping at all. And in fact, they seem to be making it worse. And that is a very, very difficult thing to go through. It certainly was for me as well. And the thing you mentioned as well about like not being able to sleep, that's extremely common with all anxiety-based conditions, and certainly with DP and DR. And for me, it was yeah, I mean, barely being able to sleep at all, having intense nightmares. Eventually, I actually got to a point where I was having nightmares about having panic attacks in DP and DR, and then waking
Mhm.
up into it, and it was horrendous. But again, as part of your recovery, you start to understand that like lack of sleep or disrupted sleep is absolutely part and parcel of your fight or flight response of any anxiety based condition. And of course, you dream about what you think about during the day. So if you spend your day thinking about DP and DR, you're probably going to dream about it, as
Yeah.
frightening as it can be. If you, as I always say to people, like if you spend your day working with puppies, you'll dream about puppies. If you spend your day playing Minecraft, you'll dream about Minecraft. It's
Mhm.
it's and it's just the same thing. But absolutely, when you're going through it first, it feels like this total loss of control, and it can be very, very frightening. But thankfully, that's not what it actually is in practicality. So, continuing with that, Taylor, at what point did your recovery start? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So at first, I didn't recognize it, like the start of it. Um, and I think it's because I just didn't see it. Like I wasn't paying attention to the fact of, hey, my days are getting better.
Yeah.
Um, but my friends and family are actually the ones who kind of like, hey, you're back to doing this again. You're you're laughing. You're cutting up. You're going a day without having to have someone on the phone to talk to you to keep your mind busy, or you're not having to watch Harry Potter 24/7 to keep your mind off of it. And then I had a friend that I worked with like 4 years back, and we randomly got reconnected, and he asked me how I was doing, and I just told him about the experience, and he had just so happened to have went through it and was in his recovery stage, because when I explained what I was going through, he hit me back with, well, have you, did you experience this, or, how is this and this? And I was like, so he knows what this is, and he's a personal acquaintance, like someone who's went through this that I can talk to daily. And he reached out to me, I think it was a few months back, and he had screenshotted our conversations from before and then our conversations from a few months back. He was like, look at the difference of how you're talking here and how you're talking here. And I was super short over text messages before. And I think that's because just anything in general that was not me just huddled up in a blanket in my bed, I didn't want to do. So like texting somebody, like I didn't want to do it. So I was just like shortening everything really short to the point. And then when he sent me the screenshots from a few months back, it was full blown paragraphs, emojis everywhere, laughing, cutting up. Like you could tell, like I had my personality in the text messages.
Right.
And he was like, "You can see that you're getting better." He said, "These things you don't recognize on the daily because it's yourself." He said, "But from somebody else's perspective and point of view," he was like, "You've done a full 180." Um, but once I was, shown from my friends and family that I was changing, I started noticing it. I noticed that I was getting up in the morning and doing this and doing that. Uh, I was leaving my house. Like, I was so excited to leave my house that I didn't care if I was going for a 5-minute drive. I was just so excited to leave my house because I had been stuck in it for months. And it seemed like the recovery came in stages because, like, I was able to leave my house with people. I would go out to friends' houses, and of course, they were all understanding. So, like, if I had like a episode where like I would panic and this and that, they would know to immediately just grab my attention and talk about something else, like get my mind on something else, which helped a lot. And then I got to the point where I was able to go out without my fiance. Like my friends would come pick me up and I wouldn't have to have him, in my ear, "You're okay. This is okay. You've got this." Like I knew I've got this. I didn't have to have him as reassurance. Then it got to the point where I was able to go out and drive to my friends' houses and drive to the gym or drive to the store and didn't have to have someone there holding my hand while I was doing it. Um, and now I can do about anything. Um, I got back into my Lego sets. I got back into going to the gym. I go to friends' houses. I've been able to stay away from home. I'll go to, excuse me, I'll go to friends' houses and stay. In the midst of all this, I did move because at the time I was living at my mom's house because I was taking care of her and stuff. I went on a vacation. Um, so she passed back in February. I went on a vacation like mid May to the Smoky Mountains here in Tennessee.
Mm.
And while I was down there, not once did I have a single thought of DP. Not once. I mean, I went down there, I had fun, I went out, I just experienced a vacation. But as soon as I got like 10 minutes from my house, it hit me. And I was like, maybe it's the environment. Maybe it's just all the traumatic experience that I went through at this house, the panic attack, the DP, the watching mama pass. And I was like, I think all of that traumatic experience was kind of like tying the DP down. It was like not letting me release it because I was constantly anxious and constantly nervous. So I finally just decided to move, which of course I only moved like 10 minutes away because my sister still lives there and I didn't want to move really far. But whenever I got moved into my new house, I was just a whole new person. I mean, not afraid to get out of bed anymore. I would get up, I would do this, I would do that. I'd go for walks. I hadn't been on a walk in months. And I would just get up and walk around my neighborhood, take my dogs for walks. I live closer to a city, so I was able to, if I wanted to go get me a McGriddle from McDonald's, I was going to do it. And nobody was going to stop me because I was so excited just to go do it. Like I never knew you could be so excited just to literally get out of the house and go to the store for a tube of toothpaste. but I was excited to do that. And now I it's like I can't sit still. Like I just want to go and do all this and do all that. And that's why my life was busy before it happened. But like now I'm able to experience it all over again. Like I'm able to get that excited feeling to go get a tube of toothpaste from the store. I mean, I'm at Walmart almost every day, and that's bad. That's bad on my freaking wallet. That's bad.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you.
Mm.
Um, and um, how was the DP manual helpful in your recovery, Taylor?
It opened my eyes. Just I think the fact that I was able to have something in my care, in my hands, on my computer that I could constantly listen to and read tell me I'm going to be okay. It finally clicked that I'm going to be okay because you did it. So why can't I? So I'm not the type to one up somebody, but I was going to one up you in this situation. I was going to
Yeah.
recover. So I used you, not used you, I used, well, I guess in that situation, yeah, as a competitive situation because I was going to recover and I was going to do it fast. And I tried not to rush it because in the manual, you said do not rush it. And I learned that because I was so sick of myself not being recovered in a week. I'm so sick of it. And when I realized that that can't happen, it's like I started to recover more. Like once I realized that, hey, this ain't gonna happen in a week, I was like, okay, it'll take time, but I got
Mm.
this. And I would literally wake up every morning and get some water and literally just like watch a few, like I'd watch 10 minutes the first day and then I'd watch 10 minutes the next day just so I could have that reassurance in the morning. Like it gave me my reasoning to get up out of bed. It was like my second Bible, I guess you could call it, because that's really what it was. The Bible's a life changer, and so was the DP manual, because I don't know where I'd be without it right now. Probably still in my bed, huddled up in a blanket, because it was very detailed. And the fact that it was I'm a very detailed person, to the fact that you hit every spot of my depersonalization in that manual, I was able to recognize it and cope with it and understand that this happens not just to me. I'm not just the bad egg in the Easter basket. Like, I'm human. It happens to everybody. And I realized that I could do it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so happy to hear it. Um, I think what you mentioned as well of, accepting, you're just kind of saying to yourself, okay, this isn't going to happen in like a week, I mean, I might see improvements, but I can't, it's unfair of myself to expect this to be kind of just pick back to normal in a week, but that's okay. And the thing is, when you kind of take that pressure off yourself, you really do start to see improvements. But what's interesting is what you mentioned earlier as well, Taylor, is that like it's often other people who start to notice the improvements first,
Hmm.
because the improvements that we make during recovery, we tend to kind of observe them on a day to day or week to week basis. Like, so we'll say to ourselves, well, I'm, I'm feeling a little bit better today, but I was feeling like much better on like last Tuesday. So maybe I'm not making progress or whatever. And we're constantly kind of questioning it. But then it's often when you're chatting to somebody and they say, oh, I see you I see you went off to the cinema last night. How was it? And you go, oh, yeah, it was good. It was good. And they say, yeah, it's great. You're back at the cinema. And you kind of think to yourself, oh yeah, I guess I am. But the the constant kind of like inserting anxiety and DP into each one of these decisions just starts to fade away. But because we're constantly checking on it, it's often easier for other people to see the progress that we're making.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you just kind of get to a point where you start doing the same, where you start forgetting about it. Like I always like to think of it. It's like the windows of time in which you're not thinking about DP get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's nothing but that space. Like so at the start, it's like you've like maybe you're doing Harry Potter Lego or something, and then for like maybe 15 seconds at a time, you're just focused on doing that, and then you're back into thinking about anxiety and back into thinking about DP. And but then that 15 seconds becomes a half minute and it becomes a minute, and then those windows get bigger and bigger and bigger until you start to have like entire days at a time where you're like, oh, I didn't think about it, you know. um that combined with people saying like, oh, I see you're looking better, like you're not, as you mentioned, Taylor, like you're a lot less short than you were in the text messages. You're using emojis again. You're making
Mm-hmm.
jokes again. Like, this
Yeah.
stuff but it kind of happens in the background while you're focusing in the other direction. But I love your description of the recovery process itself. It was very, very, very apt. Um, what's your day-to-day life like now at the moment? I mean, you're back to that. I mean, it sounds like you're very, very busy.
So I work almost every day. And then now that school has started back, I am doing four classes this semester, but one of them's an actual like class, and I don't actually have to go to the school because I do everything online, but it's like a 3 hour Zoom class. Um, I go to the gym every night, almost every night. I try to take off at least 2 days a week because they say not to go every night because you'll just wear yourself down. Um, but like in the mix of all of recovering from this, I've upped my health journey. I've lost 93 pounds in the last year. So I feel like a whole different person. And that's something that excited me. Like once I started seeing the progress, because I wasn't paying attention to it, I've been able to get out with my friends. I go bowling again. I suck at bowling, but I love to go bowling. Um, I like to play pool. Just last night, me and one of my roommate, we went and played pool, and we were out till midnight. Like I'm 28 years old. I don't need to be out till midnight. I need to be at home in bed. But it was so much fun, so much fun. Um, so really, I just work. Now I'm about to be back in school. Um, I take my time out to focus on my health as far as going to the gym, watching what I eat, everything of that sort.
It sounds like things are back to normal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And I finally, so I thought one of the things that I was going to struggle with was going to see mama, and it doesn't. I'm able to go out there and sit and talk with her. I took a fold out chair and sat out there and talked to her for like 2 hours one day. Like, I was very nervous to think that I was going to have a problem with being able to do that when I wasn't. And that made me happy. And one thing that I guess I don't want to say thankful for the DP because I mean, I guess I am because it was an experience and it taught me that I can overcome anything mentally. I'm kind of glad that I went through it because now, like I said, I know that I can overcome anything mentally that comes at me now. I went through everything through that anxiety, depression, intrusive thoughts. Thought I was going crazy, like it's but and in all reality, I remember anxiety, the depersonal it's all anxiety. That's literally all it is. It's not, depersonalization and anxiety. It's literally anxiety. And it took me a minute to realize that it's not a separate disorder or yeah, I guess disorder, but it's literally the same thing. And once that clicked, I was able to focus on my anxiety instead of, well, let me work on DP today, let me work on anxiety today, let me work on depression today. Like, no, it's all there together. And that really helped kickstart my recovery as well because I wasn't focused on this and this. I was able to focus on one thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When people recover from DPDR or any anxiety-based condition, like one aspect of it is that like you do just kind of get back to normal. Like it's very much you just kind of get back to normal routines, but also you do have this experience under your belt as well, and you do have a sense of strength from it. You also have a better understanding of anxiety, just like you've been describing, and if in the future you do encounter a situation wherein you might feel particularly stressed out or anxious, you can spot that when it happens. You can spot those feelings and identify them. And also it gives you a good sense of empathy with other people as well, like, who may be going through something similar, and it can be helpful in that context as well. So it can actually be, quite a beneficial thing in the long run. Um, one more question for you, Taylor. Do you have any advice for people with DPDR who would be maybe looking at the channel at the moment, watching this interview? Any advice for someone going through DPDR?
Stay patient. That is the key. Stay patient because I rushed it and made it worse. Stay patient. You know your own self, you know your own mind, you know your own body. Um, and where you might want to think that you can overcome everything in a day because you might think that you're superwoman like me. You're not, and it takes time. But once you start seeing the progress, you feel so much better. And you're thankful that you had the patience to try and recover because it's such a feeling of relief. I remember beginning to start like seeing my progress, and I'd be able to wake up the next morning and not be terrified. I could go on about my day without being like, well, here's another day in my crap of a life. But literally, patience is where it's at. Patience is key, 100%. And don't give up. You got it. Like, at one point, I thought I didn't have it, but I did it. And everybody else can too.
That's great. That's so good to hear. Taylor, it's been so lovely speaking to you. I'm delighted that you've recovered, and thank you for giving us your time and being with us on the channel today. It was lovely to speak to you.
It was nice speaking with you, and thank you for everything, your manual and your time as well. I mean, you don't have to take your time out of your day to do this, but you do. And it's so helpful. I mean, even in being recovered, like being able to talk to you, I feel confident that I could do this. Whereas before I didn't. I was like, he's crazy. I ain't gonna be able to do this. And now I feel like I've one upped you, so I kind of feel good.
Yeah, yeah, you win.
It's the
I love
competitiveness.
the competitive spirit's great. I love it. It's not something I really heard before, but it's really good.
Yeah.
What better motivation to get out of it to be like that guy who who told me about this? Yeah, I'm gonna beat him.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Taylor, it's been a joy speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy your recovery, enjoy life post DPDR.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.